Hi, good morning, good afternoon again. My name is Jeff Wilson. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Profisee, and I wanted to welcome everybody and thank you very much for taking the time out today to join us on our webinar. Just a couple of admin items up front. We do have a large group today, so we thought we would ask you 3 polling questions during the following presentation, and we appreciate your time in helping us gather some of that information. So those will come about during the presentation. And we plan on about 40 to 45 minutes for the presentation this morning, and would like to hold all the Q&A till the end, and we certainly will get to those questions at the end to have Bill respond to that. So with that, let me introduce our speaker today. And many of you know or may know Bill O'Kane from either the Gartner report that you may have reviewed, but Bill is an over 20-year experienced veteran of the data governance and MDM market. He most recently spent the past 8 years as a vice president at Gartner in their data and analytics practice. He's certainly, given those 8 years, a well-recognized thought leader and has advised many clients through their MDM and governance strategies along the way. And we are very privileged and honored to have Bill join Profisee as Vice President MDM Strategist. And with that, I will hand it over to Bill for the next 40 minutes or so. Actually, I would love to also let you know we are hosting several dinners in various cities across the country that we would love to have you attend, or one of your senior executives. Bill will be hosting a very exclusive dinner at a senior exec or a C-level for those at these following cities that you see on the screen here. And if you have interest, we would love to have you partake, have your senior executive meet Bill one-on-one, have dinner with Bill associated. So if you have interest, please contact us and we will get you that information right away. So thank you. Bill, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jeff. So the topic for today is one that's certainly of a lot of interest to a lot of people and a lot of organizations. It's digital transformation, and we're going to take a very focused look at the role of data management, and in particular master data management within digital business transformation initiatives. But first, we'll take a sort of a humorous look at what actually people mean by digital transformation. This is a quote that I wrote a while back, that MDMs not only makes it possible, it's critical, and you won't actually get the optimal results of any digital transformation efforts, and in fact, you increase your risk of failure, and by failure we mean things like customer alienation and loss and churn and lack of product searchability in places like the internet. So we'll explore these topics in a little more detail as we move forward. And as Jeff said, we will ask some polling questions throughout. There'll be one in a couple of minutes. Please take a couple of minutes, think about your answers. There's a large group today, so we hope to get many data points to help us in our analysis of the market. So what exactly is digital business? I actually had some discussions yesterday with some of our clients, and almost all of them have been tasked with doing this, and they were very honest that none of them really know what it is in any detail. I liken this back to when I started with Gartner 8 years ago and the big data phenomenon, if anybody remembers that everybody was sure everybody else was doing something about that. Nobody really knew what, but everyone you talked to was sure they were at some kind of disadvantage. Digital business is very much like that. It's a little bit better in that there are resources out there to help you take your business in that direction, take your processes and analytics in that direction. But what we do know is, and what I can say with a lot of confidence, is that any digitizing of any business processes, analytics, customer experience, product experience requires trusted, high quality, and low latency master data. It has to be trusted as fit for purpose for what you're doing, which interestingly doesn't always mean 100% accurate, but accuracy is certainly a good idea. But accessibility, latency, all of those other characteristics, velocity and volume, come into play with all data, but in particular master data, because as anybody who's dealt with master data and MDM knows, that this is where inconsistency happens, quality issues undermine customer experiences, and even product introductions and other critical business processes. So examples are this, inability to detect duplicate data across all systems during a customer onboarding process, which can allow people to commit fraud or incur more credit risk with your organization than you would like. And that can even result in an inability to comply with regulatory strictures. On the product data side, it can make products impossible to search on the web. I had an experience myself recently where I couldn't find something on a store's website, but when I Googled it from outside the store's website, it came right up. So again, these are things that can happen when your master data is not being managed well, and you can certainly see how in turn this would affect digital business. So without further ado, now that we've described sort of the issues with digital business and how data relates to them, we'd like to get a feel for how many people have actually been charged for this. So we're actually going to conduct a poll quickly to find out which of you are actually on this road today. Okay, thanks for the great participation rate, everyone. That was wonderful. So we'll go back to master data as a topic, and we'll get to MDM in particular in a minute, but digital business certainly, as I said, requires quality and trusted master data to succeed. Anything, in fact, if you think about it, what digital business really means is taking heuristic processes and, if they're current, automating them in some way, making digital processes able to execute those things either just as well or better than human beings did. The second part of that, which we'll get to in a few minutes, is enabling processes that don't exist today. So, and we'll get to some examples of those, but if you think about it in those two ways, sort of current but suboptimal processes, inefficient, inaccurate, and processes you can't do at all because you just don't have the data infrastructure to enable any applications that could do them otherwise. So questions like as simple as how many customers do you have? The number of organizations that cannot answer that question across their landscape is alarming. Are these two vendors or suppliers the same? Should I be getting better deals from them than I'm getting today? Am I actually spending a lot more from this particular supplier than I think I am? This customer version of that is this customer spending a lot more with me than I actually know about in this particular interaction? So again, you can see the opportunities and perils are correspondingly great. So just to make sure everybody's on the same playing field here, what is master data? There are a lot of definitions out there. The one in Wikipedia is actually incorrect. If you go out there and look, it says it's all your critical data. Master data has physical characteristics, and there are two sort of terms of art that help describe them. One is slowly changing. So for those data modelers and recovering data modelers out there, if you take a dimensional model of your entire business in your brain and then remove all the fact tables, pretty much everything left in that model would be master data. So event data is not master data, transaction data is not master data, interaction data isn't master data. All of those things can have master data on them. So a customer name can be on a sales record, and probably is, but that's not the system of record for that customer's name. That name came from someplace else when the sale was booked. That's usually where the master or system of record is. So that's one physical characteristic, is that it changes slowly. It's data elements that tend to stay the same or persist across transactions or across interactions for customers and for products as well. So the product name doesn't change every time a product is sold or stocked or all of the other processes that are product centric. So slowly changing is one characteristic. The other one is widely shared. Now, widely, again, is a term of art. For some people, if two people need to have the same value in an attribute, that's widely shared. Most organizations tend to go somewhere around 3 or 4. If 3 or 4 people need the same semantic, the same meaning, and the same value for something to execute a process successfully, that's considered master data. Now, in the example, there's sort of an irony there. Master data has always been acknowledged as valuable. In fact, some acquisitions take place because one entity wants to get access to another entity's customers or products. However, as we all know, the MDM software market alone is only about 10% penetrated. So that's about the percentage of organizations that bite the bullet and attack this when they realize they have a requirement, the latest one being digital business. Again, it was big data 10, 9, 8 years ago. Now it's digital business transformation and what data means to that. But many organizations will try it without attacking their data. And as everybody likes to say a lot, you'll do a lot of really cool things much faster, but they'll all be wrong. And some of them will be damaging. So this graphic pretty accurately describes two things. It actually describes the data management software market, but it also describes how organizations attack these disciplines. So when things are going well, and the business is fully engaged, which they generally need to be for these initiatives to be fully successful, these things will start along the lines of, well, I have to get my data in shape for digital business because I already see I'm going to have some problems. The business starts up with IT's assistance, a data governance effort, and they may use some technology or build some technology to do that. But generally, the continuum starts from left to right, which is great. So they start data governance, and they realize pretty quickly that the data they're attacking repeats across a bunch of different sources and targets, like customer name, product ID, whatever it might be. And without realizing it, they've stumbled onto master data and the need to manage it. And then we'll use master data quality capabilities or maybe some standalone data quality capabilities, either bought or built, to manage that data. So that's great. The other style is when generally IT realizes there's a problem with the quality of the data and the fact that it's breaking business processes and making analytics inaccurate. IT will sort of go out and get a data quality solution that stands alone, or they'll start writing code that does it, maybe in SQL. And that's great for sort of tactical solutions. The issues are really that it generally doesn't scale. In fact, if it works well, IT may be buried with requests to do similar standalone one-off projects to clean things up, and they're unable to scale to that. And those results are generally static. You may load all the cleaned up data back into an app, and then the app rolls along, dirtying up that data again until a couple of months later, it looks just pretty much from a quality perspective like it did before. The tools space actually parallels this. So we do have some data governance vendors that are very business centric and data management vendors that have data governance tools, but they tend to be business centric. On the other end of the spectrum are the data quality tools that tend to be sort of, in most cases, IT centric. They're pretty technical. And in the middle, as you can see in the Venn diagram idea, master data management kind of stands in the middle. It has some pretty specific capabilities around data modeling and record management because they generally are hubs and have a data store underneath them, as opposed to a metadata store. But they're also expected to do some data stewardship and workflow and execute the same data quality rules that the data quality tool had, and also some quality functions such as standardization. But the great thing to take away from this slide is that there are two directions to generally approach this. One starts sort of with the business and is the top-down way. The bottom arrow I would characterize as sort of the bottom up, where we start to fix data quality and realize we have a bigger problem, and then a change management problem that needs to be handled by some sort of governance function and possibly technology. With that, we're going to go to the next poll, and I thank you again for the participation. Okay, once again, thanks very much, everybody. That's great participation. That's going to be very useful. So why is this important, and why is data important to digital business transformation, processes and analytics? So just some examples, because I often get asked for this, is, what are you really talking about? What does this actually mean? And as I sort of telegraphed a little earlier, you want to think of these things in terms of enhancing current processes, things you already do, but they're inefficient, they're inaccurate. You do them because you have no other way to do them. Good examples, assessing credit risk during an onboarding of a customer. You might do this today, but generally it's a report that comes out on Monday morning for everything that was executed the prior week, and there's some red lines on it that say these should probably be relooked at or out and out denied retroactively. That's very alienating to whoever gets treated that way. So again, there's some risk there, and you may not actually be able to undo a transaction readily, and you may actually get some damage in addition to the risk. New processes are things you can't do at all. So the common one everybody likes to talk about is cross-selling and upselling during a customer onboarding or during a service interaction. It says, we looked at the last 5 things this customer did, and it turns out that the best 6th thing for them to do is this, and offer them a break to do it now. And that can be very powerful, especially when it's done in real time, again, requiring low latency master data. So without MDM, what can go wrong? This goes back to people implementing digital business technology and processes around customer experience, for example, mistakenly rejecting or approving a customer for credit during a transaction. Approving creates risk, obviously, of credit damage. Rejecting creates risk of losing the customer, who might otherwise be quite lucrative for you. Attempting to sell a product the customer already owns or is rejected during past interactions. I've had this experience several times myself. The list is too long to actually go through, but again, offering to to sell me a car I already have is pretty common. I get that a lot. And finally, lastly, and maybe most egregious, is violating privacy preferences or regulations. MDM is actually a pretty popular data store for storing things like privacy preferences, which are considered academically and technically master data. So again, an inability to manage those effectively can just be catastrophic. So this is sort of a useful way to restate what we've been going through around categorizing business benefits. This is a little something I came up with since coming to Profisee. And it's pretty simple. The x-axis, below the x-axis and above the x-axis are pretty much accounting concepts of below the line and above the line. So below the line is saving money, above the line is making new money. The more interesting for me actually is the vertical axis. To the left of that are things, again, that you do now that you're not great at. They're maybe not systems of differentiation or innovation, but they could be better. They may actually be systems of differentiation, but you're not differentiating yourselves because they're just not that great at what they do. To the right are net new processes, things you can't do at all that would either save or make money. Now, the reason that the arrow is there, and that this is sort of interesting to me historically, is, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, very good IT people left to their own devices will stay in the lower left of this quadrant. They'll actually try to optimize current suboptimal processes in order to save money. And that's great because they don't have to talk to anyone besides the people they've always talked to and had lunch with and had meetings with. As you move to the upper right, which is really where the full value of digital business and MDM comes from, is things you don't do at all that make new money. Those are actually the best, and often business cases for digital transformation and for MDM rely on that upper right quadrant. If those benefits are not identified, it becomes impossible to build a business case that justifies making these changes. And the negative thing there is, it's not that you shouldn't do these things, it's that you can't justify something you absolutely should do in order to get digital business and going and the benefits that go with it, whether it's data related or process related. And now that we've talked about sort of the business case categorization and the way to look at business benefits, I'd like to take one last poll around business case development and creation at your organization. Thanks again in advance for the participation. Great, thanks again everyone for participating in all three of those questions. That's going to be very helpful. So just to tie the last few concepts together a bit, how does MDM provide trusted data to these digital business processes and analytics once you're able to justify them? So some pretty interesting concepts here. I have a friend and former colleague who liked to say, the problem is that business applications all act like they're the master for things like customer data and product data, but most organizations have multiple applications for those things. So those two concepts cannot coexist. You can't have a bunch of things sitting there all thinking they're the master when there are more than one of them. So that's where sort of MDM as a concept comes into the picture, and you can think of the idea of, for example, attempting to make your CRM or ERP system your master. And if you do things from a manual process and maybe some data validation rules in those systems point of view, that can work for a while. It's usually not scalable over time, especially if you're successful and you grow as an organization, because most of those apps, as my friend liked to say, are designed to treat their data as if it's the only data in the world. And so the two things that they're not very good at are any kind of sophisticated data quality rules or the ability to integrate with other systems. You may get sort of a very simple API that they grudgingly created, but really they're there to control processes, not data. And that's a great way to think about it. So that you don't end up thinking they're bad people, because they're doing what they get paid to do, which is manage a specific set of business processes, sometimes only one in some cases. The other effect of that is that you're basically running your business along the lines of whatever data model is in those applications or data models. MDM is often the first chance, since most tools, and Profisee, my current employer, is one of them, but it's a common style, are what's called multi-domain or model agnostic. And that means something pretty special. This is the first time that you may be able to fully accurately model how you do business today, instead of making your business look like your business application. So you can actually figure out what a customer really means to this organization, what a product really means to this organization, and build a data model around those things. And if it turns out, that doesn't mean having a single definition necessarily for customer and a single definition for product, but it does mean that if you have multiple definitions, that you codify them in your new data model so that people stop talking about them as if they're all one thing, which does a lot of damage, including what I call the hallway reconciliation, which is when you and I walk up to each other with spreadsheets that are supposed to match exactly and they don't. And we spend the rest of the day, maybe we have lunch first, but then we spend the rest of the day figuring out why my spreadsheet doesn't look like yours when we're both doing customer counts by location. And it usually turns out that your source is different than mine and the models are different. And the meaning of what customer is in those systems may actually even be different. Another benefit of MDM is it can allow you to centralize data quality rules, often that have been defined elsewhere, into a single place where they're enforced in real time as data is entered. So you're not constantly going back and trying to remediate. You're actually preventing the problems from happening in the first place. So that sort of solves the data quality problem I mentioned that business apps have. The last thing it solves is also the integration problem. MDM lives to be called and to call other things. They all come with service layers, including Profisee. So the idea is to lower the latency of the access to that data so that business processes and analytics can get to the current values of things that are now semantically reconciled as often and as quickly as they need to. So what does all that mean in real life? So this is a pretty popular example of ERP, supply chain management, CRM, and finally a BI platform, maybe a data warehouse or a data mart. And you can see that there are different examples here of things that are different across these systems. And I won't take a lot of time to go into each example. Some of you are probably very well conversant in this, but things like D&B numbers, and in the case, maybe an Abilitech key from Axiom, and maybe just differences in name entry and email addresses, which are notoriously of bad quality, addresses that are not standard. If you get all that cleaned up with something like an MDM tool, you can bring them together into a single persistent hub that allows you to have what's called a single view of the customer, which then can enable a 360 view of the customer or product if we're talking about product data, or asset if we're talking about asset. But that's how MDM helps, is it brings these data instances together into something that's trusted. And that concept of trust is what's key to all of this, because if you're going to digitize any of your processes or analytics, and again, as I said earlier, reduce the heuristic participation in these things so that you don't need a pair of eyeballs or more than one pair looking at something to decide how it should be used or what should be done with it, you're going to need something like MDM to do that. So a little more explanation. How does MDM enable these things to happen? MDM will contain, if done properly, the trusted golden record of a customer or product's master data, references to the customer's data across all operational systems. And it can actually then be used to point to all of the non-master data, like the transactional data, the interactional data. You can point to a CRM system and get all the interactions back. Often MDM is done in conjunction with something like an enterprise service bus that really facilitates that and is very powerful. It can allow business rules to be automated and executed with low latency within an engine across boundaries that formerly required, such as business application boundaries, required manual processes to be executed. I have to search one system before I can create a data record in another system. Or that was completely impossible because that was two different departments that never speak to each other. And hence both of them are optimizing for themselves, one with a CRM maybe, one with an ERP. And they have no real interest because they don't see the bigger picture in making that data consistent and trusted so that it can be used anywhere, because really they're looking at their own process. So with that, I'll turn it over to any questions we may have. I know we've been collecting them in the chat. So we do have one around how do I know if I have a business case? You know, great. I guess somebody saw the last poll question and did a little soul searching there. That's a great question. I would say in the thousands of client calls I took in my role as an analyst, I estimated about 80% of them at least had something to do with business case justification and how that plays into program management of data management initiatives. And I would say that, again, it's 80%. And you know, the key is to make sure that it's a set of business outcomes, process or analytics that business leaders care about. If your CEO wouldn't care about what you're saying, it's worth it to go back and take a look at that. Often IT architecture principles, like better data quality, better decisions, even a 360-degree view sometimes masquerades as a business case. And if you pry in a little deeper and ask what would be done with something like that, the answers are not forthcoming from either IT or the business. And that's a risk. That raises the risk. The really powerful, low-risk transformational initiatives are the ones where you say, what does digital transformation mean to you? And a list of 4 or 5 things pops out immediately that are process-based. Oh, well, when a customer onboards, this is now going to happen in real time, or I used to wait for a report, I get a pop-up window. Now I get really good information. I don't have to wait and wonder if I'm doing the right thing. And I can be much more assertive in those kind of interactions. So great question. Profisee actually, somebody asked, does Profisee have an MDM tool? Profisee actually, today is all we do is concentrate on the MDM market. So yes, we do. It's called the Profisee platform. It's one of the few Microsoft-based tools on the market, which is a great thing. And it's actually one of the lower price points, if not the lowest, across the MDM market. So yes, we do have one. It's quite powerful and easy to use. We actually have a demonstration that shows how you can start up 2 domains, customer and product, in about 15 minutes, coming even from the cloud. So we start off from an Azure instance. Great question, thank you. Can I show again? Someone asked to show the categorization of business slides. I guess somebody wants to take a picture. Let's see. I will step back. I assume that's what we meant. So again, yes, it's below the line and above the line for cost and revenue. And left side of the x-axis, or the y-axis, is currently suboptimal processes, and the right side is things we can't do at all today. So again, I'll knock myself as a former IT architect. I lived in the lower left of this, and it was only during my first MDM program that I was forced by a consulting company to move into the upper right and start getting to know the business and what it is they wanted and needed and why, and should they even have it, and how could we get it to them if it's something they should have. Thanks very much, great question. I'm assuming that the requester had time to do what they wanted to do here. Okay, that's it for today. I'll hand it back to Jeff now to close things out. Thanks very much, everyone.
Oh, thank you, Bill. And thank you again, everybody, for attending. We have recorded this and it will be available to you via link that we'll send to everybody as well. And we look forward to having you join us for future webinars. Bill will be doing this on a monthly basis for us, at least for the next 4 to 6 months. Different topics that we find familiar in either question or interest in the audience. So again, thank you. And I believe sorry, Bill was just letting me know the next webinar will be focused around how to help build a business case. And I believe that's on September 25th next month. So we will be in touch with you on that. With that, thank you again, and we'll let everybody go. Thank you for joining.